Reality check. The other railway was undergoing hard times, more so than usual. The staff had been threatened with legal action after a disastrous visit from two important media persons. If they wanted any chance of the charges being dropped, the railway had to undergo an official inspection. Everyone spent the next few days feeling very nervous. Spamcan was so worked up about it he even took up smoking, but he just as quickly kicked the habit when he asked his driver for a light and ended up with his fuel tank on fire. At long last, the day of reckoning arrived. The thin git was lying asleep on his office floor, empty whiskey bottles strewn all round him. His butler hopped around them and shook his master awake.
"Excuse me, sir," he said. "There's a rather distinguished gentleman to see you. Shall I inform him to swivel on it?"
The thin git was barely able to speak, so the butler rolled his eyes and let him in anyway. A few moments later, a man in a black suit and bowler hat stood frowning down at the hung-over controller. "Sir Wyatt Frunts?" he inquired in clipped tones.
"Huh?"
"I believe I have an appointment with you. I am the railway inspector."
Gah!
The thin git sobered in an instant. He sat bolt upright on the floor with bloodshot eyes clamped wide open. "Ah, you're alive. That always helps," sniffed the inspector.
Please excuse the mess," spluttered the thin git. Only you never told us when you were coming."
"Surprise inspection," replied the inspector, "gives us a chance to view the railway's day-to-day operations in a more natural light. Shall we begin?" With a defeated groan, the thin git pulled himself to his feet and staggered over to the doorway after him.
"Perhaps I could recommend a pair of trousers before you leave, sir,"
inquired his butler. An obscene hand gesture was his tip. Their first stop was the big fat station. As the inspector's car pulled up, angry voices could be heard from the platforms.
"Wake up!
"He's just sitting there."
Bloody railway!"
The thin git winced in his seat. The passengers were yelling at Diesel. He had been setting up old Stuck-Up's express coaches and fallen asleep halfway through. No doubt he'd been hitting the oil refinery the night before. Everyone shouted and bellowed, but nothing worked. As if things couldn't get any worse, old Stuck-Up himself showed up seconds later.
"The lazy little louse," he snarled. "Fine. If you want something done right, you've got to do it yourself."
Growling fiercely, he charged into Diesel and sent him flying backwards into the coaches already arranged. The carriages rocketed through the station buffers and flew in all directions. They crashed into offices, they smashed through support pillars. In under a minute, the station had been completely demolished. As passengers ran screaming from the scene and old Stuck-Up slinked away, the thin git watched the inspector scribbling furiously in his notebook.
"That's my engines for you," he smiled weakly. "Always eager to help each other out."
Diesel belched loudly in his sleep. Their visit to the yard was no less horrifying. The first thing that caught their eye as they arrived was a large cloud of black smoke beside the breakdown train. "Fire!" cried the inspector.
"No,"
groaned the thin git.
"Derek."
The duo made their way over to the Diesel, coughing furiously as they entered his thick fog.
"Sorry," said Derek. "Overheated again. Those blasted trucks must have been holding back again."
"Not to worry, sir," called one of the workmen. "We'll put him right again. Just you watch."
The crane suddenly swung round and knocked the green Diesel onto his side.
"It could take a few hours, though,"
the workman added. The inspector continued scribbling as he and the thin git left Derek to be rescued. They had barely gone a few tracks when they bumped into Spamcan beside a signal box. He was coupled to a long line of trucks and happily exchanging dirty anecdotes with the brakefather. "And just what is this engine still doing here when his signal is green?" the inspector asked. "He should have left for the industrial district 15 minutes ago, according to my copy of the schedule."
"Shut up, I'm almost done,"
snapped Spamcan and continued his story. until his dear controller started kicking his door.
All right,
He growled and finally hauled his heavy load out of the yard. Oil drums on flatbeds, girders in coal trucks, pipes unsecured, tutted the inspector. The thin git was sweating furiously. What else could possibly go wrong?
crash!
Good Lord! Exclaimed the inspector. That sounds like your goods diesel. Both he and the thin git scurried along the line after Spam Can. It wasn't long before they found him and his truck sprawled across the tracks, along with Bowler and a train of empty coaches. How on earth could this have happened? The inspector cried. The signal was still at green. He stopped. Where are their drivers? The thin git smiled weakly.
What drivers?
They're drivers, Mr. Frantz. They're drivers. The people who drive them. Where are they?
Buggered off,
grumbled Spam Can.
Said he'd rather be at home watching the cricket.
Pfft. Who needs him anyway?
Well said, agreed Bowler. This has only been my second collision today without mine. If he wants his Brian Lara, he can have him.
All the commotion attracted an irate man in a signalman's uniform and nightcap.
"Oh, will you look at this?" he moaned. "Can't you lot keep your crashes quiet? Some of us are trying to catch up on some sleep."
"Mr. Frantz?" said the inspector. The thin git didn't reply. He was too busy introducing his head to the nearest wall. It was sunset before the calamity came to an end. The inspector was just dropping the thin git off at the big fat station before he left. Workmen could already be seen trying to put the station back together, but with little success. Blue tack will only do so much.
Well, I hope you enjoyed your visit,
said the thin git in a would-be cheerful voice. The inspector simply eyed him coldly. The controller began to tremble, and within seconds he was on his knees, pleading his coal heart out.
"Oh, please, sir. Please, I'm sorry, sir. Truly sorry, sir,"
he grovelled pathetically.
"I'm sorry for the laziness and the delays and the destruction,
Mr. Frantz,
and the cheap engine parts and the incompetence and the bad manners,
Mr. Frantz,
and the shoddy rolling stock and the drivers and the signalmen."
Mr. Frantz! The thin git snapped out of his bootlicking.
Yes?
Mr. Frantz, if you really must know, none of the faults which you have just mentioned to me about your railway interest me in the slightest.
Really?
The controller beamed. Of course not, snapped the inspector. Goodness, man, every railway in the country's like that nowadays. No, Mr. Frantz, what truly dissatisfies me about your railway is the complete and total lack of any female staff.
What? That's it?
That's it, spluttered the inspector. You say, that's it, to the Deputy Vice-Chairman of the British Political Correctness Brigade? He flashed his badge impressively. You have 2 weeks to acquire at least one female employee, he went on. Otherwise, I shall take great pleasure in making sure your railway never runs another service for the rest of eternity. Good day to you. With that, he drove away from the big fat station and out of view. The thin git picked a beetle up off the ground.
"Well, at least I still have my dignity,"
he sighed, and fed it to the creatures in his moustache. We need another engine by court order. The thin git sat in his office at the big fat station, looking through brochures for engine retailers. It was a hard job with all the noise outside. The passengers were angry, and the man running the pitchfork stall was making a fortune. The station master came in, his clothes in tatters thanks to the baying mob.
"There's trouble in the shed, sir," he proclaimed. "Bowler is sulking, there's no train, and the passengers are saying this is a bad railway."
"Sounds like a regular Monday to me,"
grumbled the thin git.
"Now bugger off. I'm deliberating."
"But, sir," said the station master, "it's a protest.
The big diesels say they're exacting their engine rights. The thin git leapt to his feet when he heard that.
Engine rights indeed, he said. We cannot allow that.
The thin git raced to the sheds immediately. He found Spam Can, Bowler and Old Stuck-Up looking very cross.
All right, get those wheels moving, Bowler, he scolded. It's time your train was ready. Bowler's not going, said Old Stuck-Up firmly. We won't have any women in our workplace. We are important, and very masculine, diesel engines. You buy a female locomotive, and it'll be all pink frills and doilies around here forever. Diesel engines don't do unisex. Oh, indeed, said the thin git. We'll see about that. Engines on my railway do as they're told.
No, we don't, grunted Spam Can. That's why we're having this argument, you git.
Less of that lip, you, snapped the controller. This railway's in enough trouble as it is. You're going to work today whether you like it or not.
And he stormed away to find Derek.
The yard just hasn't been the same since those bloody media folk came by, he thought bitterly.
Derek was in the goods yard. He had just received his second overhaul in a week and was about to do some shunting.
Leave those trucks there, Derek, said the thin git. I want you to bust up some hippies for me at the sheds.
Thank you, sir. That will be a nice change.
That's a good henchman, said the controller. Off you go, then.
So Derek dragged each of the 3 engines from the sheds, and that day the trains ran as usual, all 20 to 30 minutes late. But next morning in the yard, Derek looked unhappy. Spam Can came rumbling by, venting noxious gases rudely.
Good God, exclaimed the thin git. What a pong!
They all fart in my general direction, sir, answered Derek. They say diesel engines don't do unisex, and last night they said I have pink wheels. I haven't, have I, sir?
Well, actually, I think you do, said the thin git, taking a closer look. Yes, one of their drivers probably did that, the little bastards. Well, that's not important right now. We need a female engine here, and I'm getting one today whether they like it or not. The fate of the railway depends on it.
Sir, said Derek, is it wrong that I really like my wheels like this?
Yes, it is, said the thin git bluntly.
Later that day, he went to a workshop, and they showed him all sorts of engines, but they were all too expensive, so he went somewhere a little more affordable.
Attention, shoppers,
the tannoy blared.
Used trucks have just been slashed down to 65p. That's Asda price.
The thin git roamed the store, searching for the engine he so desperately desired. At long last, he found 2 female high-speed train units on sale near the toiletries. As if that wasn't good enough, he could get their coaches with them for half price.
They're the ones for me, he said merrily. If I buy you 2, will you work hard?
Oh, sir, yes, sir, they said excitedly.
That's a good pair. I'll call you Candy and you Sugar.
Actually, we already have names, said the first unit. My name's Pip, and this is Emma.
You're Candy and Sugar,
snapped the dirty controller, and brought them to the checkout. Derek had just had his 3rd overhaul when the thin git arrived with 2 diesels he'd never seen before.
Derek,
called the controller,
this is Candy and Sugar. Show them everything, will you? There's a good toady.
Derek gave Pip and Emma the grand tour of the railway. The duo soon learned what they had to do, and the trio had a happy afternoon. The high point had to be when Derek showed them the sheds. Spam Can rolled up to them, growling as per, when... whoosh! Whoosh! The big blue diesel was engulfed in 2 clouds of pitch-black, foul-smelling smoke. Coughing and spluttering, he retreated back to the shed.
Now that's farting in their general direction, laughed Derek. That was wonderful, girls. I can't vent my fumes like that. Oh, said Pip, that's nothing. You should smell them back in the supermarket. Venting noxious gases is the only way to make yourself heard.
And that's just the staff, chuckled Emma. The next morning, Derek and the girls were resting in the yard when Diesel arrived.
"The thin git sent for me," he said loftily. "If he asks about the brawl at the refinery last night, I was at home with you. Got it?"
Shh! Here he comes, whispered Derek.
"Ah, you're all here," said the thin git. "Jolly good, jolly good. Listen, Spamcan, Bowler and old Stuck-Up are sulking. They say they don't want women sharing the workplace with them. I have taken their concerns on board and barricaded them in their sheds. So, I'm going to need you lot to run the line for a while."
"No women, indeed," snorted Diesel. "We'll show them. Don't those idiots realize the perks they'd miss out on?"
A dirty smile crept on his face as he thought of a certain quarry Diesel getting her skirts refitted.
"And of course, Candy and Sugar will help too."
"Yes, sir," replied the twins with rolling eyes. So it was arranged. Diesel and Derek worked the main line, greeting each other as they passed by. That is to say, Derek would give a greeting, and Diesel would toot so loud his friend would break down in surprise. Pip and Emma took over the goods work. They found this very odd, as they were designed for passenger services, but the thin git promised to send them back to Asda if they asked any more questions. There were fewer trains and just as many delays, but the passengers didn't mind. They knew the 3 other engines were having a lesson. That may sound unrealistically tolerant of them, but believe me, they hated those 3 other engines. Spamcan, Bowler and old Stuck-Up were cold, lonely, miserable, and feeling a little less masculine. They wished now they hadn't been so sexist. A Woman's Touch. Spamcan, Bowler and old Stuck-Up were miserable. They had been shut up for several days for being sexist pigs, and longed to be let out again. At last the thin git arrived.
"I hope you are sorry," he said, "and understand that your masculinity is not under attack after all. We have 2 high-speed units called Candy and Sugar, who are both quite butch, and Derek and Diesel have been getting along with them fine. I will let you out now if you promise to be good."
"Yes, sir," oiled the 3 Diesels. "We will."
"That's right. Just remember that this engine rights nonsense must stop. Now bugger off and do some work for a change."
Later that night, the 3 Diesels were alone with Pip and Emma in the sheds. Despite the thin git's words, they still felt rather threatened and had tried digging up some dirt on their new co-workers. Whenever a chance came, they would talk of nothing but faulty cooling systems. "Remember the time yours failed and you had to get rescued by a smelly old steam engine?" they would tease Pip. Emma tried to get her own back, talking about engines who crashed through shed walls, gobbled up bowler hats, and needed to be rescued by an even smellier and older steam engine, but they wouldn't listen.
"You talk too much, little girls,"
said old Stuck-Up, despite having hogged most of the conversation.
"A fine, strong, handsome stallion of an engine like me has something to talk about. I'm the only engine who can pull the express. When I'm not there, they need 2 engines. Think of that."
"Hogwash all," snorted Bowler. "What about all those times I took it because you'd had too much French oil the night before?"
"Or all the times I took it because the coach's buffers weren't clean enough for His Majesty here," growled Spamcan.
"Proper hygiene is nothing to growl about," sniffed Bowler.
"Oh, shut up," snapped old Stuck-Up. "Anyway, I've pulled expresses for years, much longer than you 4 sods, and have never once lost my way. I seem to know the right line by instinct."
Anyone with half a brain knows, of course, that the signalman works the points to make engines run on the right lines. But old Stuck-Up had downed 1 drum too many of Chateau de Eurostar, and so had forgotten.
Wake up, you lot,"
slurred old Stuck-Up to the twins next morning.
It's nearly time for the expresses. What are you two doing, odd jobbies? Oh well, Sir Wyatt will remember whatever it is you do someday. Run along now and get my, whatever it is you call them, coachies. That's it, my coachies. Don't be late.
Pip and Emma grumbled away to get the coaches. They were all shining with lovely new duct tape. The girls were careful not to bump them, and they followed them smoothly into the big fat station, singing gloomily, "We're going with Stuck-Up, we're going with Stuck-Up." "I wish we were going instead," said Pip. "We'd love to pull an express and fly along the line again. If that twit of a git lets us," added Emma. "I swear he's a few sleepers short of a siding." At that point, old Stuck-Up, with much noise, hiccuping, and venting of gases, got ready to back onto the train. The thin git was on the train, with the greyish author and the red producer, to show them the railway had indeed changed. As soon as he heard the guard's bellow of, "Get a bloody move on then," old Stuck-Up started.
Look at me, ladies, look at me, ladies,
He slurred, and the coaches jerked after him.
Shoot, 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 shoot. Goodbye, little girls. See you tomorrow.
Pip and Emma watched the train disappear and then went back to work. They pushed some trucks into their proper sidings, not that easy with their rounded fronts, and went to fetch the coaches for another train. Emma had just brought the last coaches to the platform when they heard music. There was old Stuck-Up, giving an off-key rendition of Knees Up, Mother Brown at the top of his voice. "Hello, Stuck-Up. Is it tomorrow?" grinned Pip. Old Stuck-Up didn't answer. He just gave them a big silly grin. "Did you lose your way?" asked Emma.
Indeed I did not,
slurred the male diesel.
Those blasted single men thought I was too drive to drunk, so they switched me onto the loop, and I went all round and back again.
Instinct indeed, tutted Pip. Emma giggled. Meanwhile, all the passengers hurried to the booking office. "We want our money back," they shouted. This in itself was nothing new, but the greyish author and the red producer were among them. The thin git scrambled on a trolley and threw the guard in the air. He screamed so loudly that they all stopped to look at him. Then he promised them a new train at once. First they tried Bowler, but the buffers were just that little bit too dirty for his liking. Next they tried Spam Can, who was so rough he almost snapped a carriage clean in half. Diesel had a shot as well, but he was far too small and short-tempered to move the train an inch. Lastly came Derek, who burst into flames the second he was coupled up. At last, the thin git approached Pip and Emma.
"None of the others can do it," he said. "Can you pull it for us, girls?"
"Yes, sir, we'll try," they said. So a twin was coupled on at either end, and everyone got in.
"Do your best, ladies,"
said the thin git. Come along, chugged Pip and Emma, and rolled out of the station. "You're pulling us well," sang the coaches. "You're pulling us..." Bridges and stations flashed by as the high-speed train suddenly went into overdrive. The passengers were both screaming and cheering as they tumbled about the coaches like paper flakes in a snow globe. Then, as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. They were already at the last station. Everyone gave a giddy thank you to the twins, and the two media folk were very impressed. "That's a fine pair of engines you have there, Sir Franz," said the greyish author. "Polite, safe, reliable, and very, very fast. We started an hour behind schedule, and we've ended with half an hour to spare." "And you've heeded our recommendations on your hiring policy too," added the red producer. "Very well, Sir Franz. We shall drop the lawsuit and leave you to your railway. Good day." And they both wobbled away to wait for their bus. The thin git was ecstatic.
"Well done, you two,"
he cheered, and personally snogged each of them in turn. Did he use tongue? What's it to you, you perverted little bookworm, you?
"This calls for a reward,"
the thin git went on as the twins coughed and hacked.
How would you like to be my new express engines?
Yes, please, cried Pip and Emma.
Then it's settled, said the controller. Hooray for candy and sugar!
He'll get it right someday, groaned Pip. Pip and Emma are now fully fledged members of the other railway fleet. Their fast and reliable express service means the railway now actually makes a profit. Well, about £2.50 a day, but it's better than nothing. And their feminine wiles mean that the PC police won't be a-knocking for a good long while. As for the other engines, I think it's safe to say their views on women drivers have changed substantially. Don't you think? P.S. Old Stuck-Up is at the Priory workshop as we speak.